In the Fuzzy Memories podcast, we celebrate the good, the rad, and the fugly of the 80s and 90s.
We're three latchkey kids who made it out alive.
And in each episode, we break down all the culture that popped, 1 year at a time.
Whether it's the birth of legends...
I'm Lyme disease free today, and I have Whitney Houston and MTV to thank. Or audacious moves.
Imagine also the poor Golden Gate Bridge. You turn 75 and people have a party on you.
Yep. I don't want that.
Or even confusing PSAs.
And the stop, drop, and roll. I mean, I assumed
Yes.
as an adult I would catch on fire weekly.
All the time!
We've got a take that will make you laugh.
We've also got thoughts on all sorts of random phenomena and the most unmitigated of golf.
Why sharks can't be trusted, people can't be trusted, and rivers can't be trusted. It's collusion.
Of the highest degree.
Uh-huh.
You were counseling me to start my remarks with, first of all, bitch.
Everyone in that room would have snapped to attention.
It's going to be basically coffee lids, shark revenge, and then maybe like Matt Getz. God, we need to do something about him.
Join us every other Wednesday to celebrate the hits, the misses, and the misfits of the weirdest decades.
If I could tell my 14-year-old self from 1990 that I would be eating in a Cheesecake Factory
In Beverly Hills.
I'd be like, we did it. We did it, Joe.
We did it.
Listen and subscribe to Fuzzy Memories on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your favorite podcast platform.
Hey, Broads and Books listeners, we've got an exciting offer for you.
Libro FM lets you purchase audiobooks directly from your favorite local bookstore. With Libro.fm, you'll get the same audiobooks at the same prices as you'll find elsewhere, but you'll be part of a much different story, one that supports community.
And listeners of Broads and Books get 3 audiobooks for the price of 1.
To listen, all you need is a smartphone and the free Libro FM app. From there, you check out recommendations and curated lists from the people who know audiobooks best, local booksellers.
We love this deal because we love audiobooks and we love supporting local and indie bookstores.
To get your special deal for listening to Broads and Books, go to Libro.fm, Libro.fm, and enter Broads and Books, all one word. You can find that URL and the special code in this episode's show notes in your podcast player and on our website.
Hello and welcome to Broads and Books. I'm Amy.
And I'm Erin, and this is episode number 62, Where is My Mind?
Oh, this Pixies song. It's one of my favorites.
Yes.
And I picked it this week because I liked the idea of characters who might be losing their mind or characters who are being told that they're losing their minds. A little gaslighting, if you will.
Yes.
We've talked about that before, the idea of gaslighting. Yeah.
We have talked about gaslighting before, and nothing makes me angrier.
Because it's such an insidious thing. And it feels very
is.
individual. Like someone is manipulating one other person in particular to control them in a way by making them feel crazy.
Yes, and I think that that's actually a universal feeling that people don't often recognize is when someone else is convincing you you're crazy, but inside you're like, I'm not though. I know that this is right.
But it becomes harder and harder to hold on to that sense of, I know what's right.
Yes.
When someone, especially someone you care about, is trying to make you.
Yes.
So that's what this week's about. Some, people being convinced that they're crazy.
Yeah, when they're not.
When they're not.
We're here to tell you you're not.
Is that a blanket statement? Even if someone is crazy?
No.
Well,
I mean, even if you are crazy,
it's
some
fine.
days you need to feel like
some
you're not.
days, yes.
So, yes.
And aren't we all a little crazy in this world right
all
now?
the best people are. That's
Yeah.
all I know. Okay, so kind of speaking to that, have you ever experienced something where you felt like you were in a dream? Like you're not sure if this is happening. Is this real? What's going on?
Yeah, and it was in a sort of political situation, which, you know, I mean, I think we could probably say that for the last 4 years of our political existence. But I'm thinking particularly of when I was in high school, I volunteered on a campaign, and it was some sort of school project. Like, you had to volunteer somewhere in the community. And I can't remember if I told this story before. I don't think I have, but I volunteered for the Equal Rights Amendment campaign, and it was the state campaign to add the words "and women" to all men are created equal in the state constitution.
Right.
In my mind, a slam dunk. This makes great sense. Why wouldn't we want to add the words "and women"?
Yeah.
I work through the campaign. I do lots of, menial labor. I'm feeling good. And then it doesn't pass. And I literally, there's so many things I think about with that moment. I think, A, it felt so surreal. Like, why wouldn't this pass? This makes no sense. Mm-hmm. And B, it kind of has made me, the way I am politically, where it's like, well, of course, because it's logical, and logic doesn't work in this world.
Right. Yeah. Well, that had to be particularly when you put a lot of time and effort into something and then it doesn't work. That's really... And you realize that other people don't see things through the same lens you do, and some of them, quite frankly, have a crazy lens.
And there was super crazy. I remember around that time, there was a lot of stuff like Pat Robertson's comments about, feminism making women into witches and lesbians. All that kind of stuff was being brought up around this campaign. And so seeing the crazy that comes out, especially with a particular kind of men and women, when the idea of a woman being equal to a man is brought up, was just, it was stunning. And it made me feel like we were all living in a weird ass dream.
That's a perfect example. That's a good one. I didn't even think of it in that context, but yeah, there's so many things, that are true to that.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Well, Erin, have you ever had an experience where you thought everyone around you lost their minds and you were the only sane one?
Yes. One that jumped to my mind, and I'm not sure if I spoke about it in length or detail on before, but one of the first trips that Mike and I took to Hawaii,
I think I know the story.
We decided, actually I shouldn't say we, he'd be very angry. I decided to book like a sunset dinner cruise because I thought, it'd be nice, like a good way to see the sunset. And I was pregnant with Mason at the time. So there was also activities that I was that were like a balance between being like too much and whatever. So we walk up to the place that you have to check in at this boat. And we look over and there's a couple, and I don't quite know how to describe what she was wearing because I've never seen it in any other context except one. But it was like this blue, shiny Lycra material, very tight. And then she had on shoes that were very tall and clear and lit up. So like heels that light up in the heel.
Sure,
okay?
Sure.
And I was like, that is a bold statement and very odd for a sunset dinner cruise, but okay. So, of course, Mike and I are kind of looking at each other, and I was like, they're totally going to end up at our table because we knew that there were tables. Really not believing that, right? Well, yep. It was a table of 4, and those were the people we were sat with.
Oh, God.
And it just went downhill so fast. I can't even explain to you. Between sitting down and the end where she literally stole cans of pop by sticking them down her bra. And I'm not kidding. Cans of pop. Like, you're not fooling anyone. We can all see them. There's so much stuff in between. And I remember the whole time looking at Mike and just feeling like everyone on the ship is crazy. Because it was like this insane thing was happening to us, but everyone else is having a great time. Like, they're eating and they're getting up and dancing to the DJ and looking. I completely missed the sunset. There was no sunset cruise for us. It was so bizarre. I don't even know. There was napkins stuck to her face at one point.
Oh.
There was multiple pictures taken. There was a discussion about whether or not we were going to exchange phone numbers.
Oh.
There was a lengthy discussion about swap meets and ones that they had found in Hawaii.
Swap meets? What's that?
You take things and like swap for other.
Oh, I was thinking it was like a swingers thing. I was like, okay.
No,
all right.
No, there was a lengthy discussion about her substance abuse issues and raising pit bulls, and none of this was on our side of the table, just to be clear. And honestly, her husband seemed very nice, but he said nothing.
Okay.
The entire time.
Which you have to assume he does that most of the time?
Yeah.
Like, that's their relationship? Yeah.
The only sentence that he uttered the entire time was, and I quote, "This chicken is shit." To which she offered him more chicken. And I was like, I don't know where I am. Like, what just happened? How did I do this to us?
Wow.
It felt very like I did it.
Yeah.
And Mike feels that way. Very
specific. Describing the story, it kind of sounds that way too. Although I thought you were going to tell the story of when you went on the hunt for the best banana bread in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had it and you're like, everyone else is crazy. This isn't that good.
It isn't good.
No.
Yeah.
That was in Hawaii too.
Yeah. That happened too. But no, this was, I remember having kind of an out of body feeling. Like, we're on this, like, no one understands what's happening to us right now. Like, no one gets it. Mike and I did not speak for a long time when we got off that ship. Like, we were safely in the car on the way back to the hotel. And then I was just like, well, and he's like, no.
Nope.
No, I'm not ready. And I was like, well, maybe we should go to swap meet.
Oh, is he still not ready to talk about it? Can he talk about it now?
He can,
okay,
yeah,
that's
but
good.
With the sort of,
I mean, it was what, like
blame.
7 years ago, 6 or 7. Yeah.
There's a lot of blame. He's angry.
Yeah, that's
and
understandable.
To this day, if someone says something Sunset Cruise, even if you're not in Hawaii, he's adamant that you shouldn't go. He won't go, and it's a terrible idea. Also, to be fair, I didn't realize when we bought tickets that we would be seated with other people. I don't know why
I wouldn't think that either, and that I wouldn't have done it if I had thought that.
Yeah, we didn't really realize that till we walked up to the boat and I saw, you could see like, oh, there's bigger tables. Like, this isn't going to be just a you and I experience. Yeah, we definitely wouldn't have.
Sounds terrible.
Well, and now they gave you drink tickets when we got on. And so I had given all my drink tickets to Mike because I was pregnant. And when we sat down, he hadn't used any yet. He had just gotten a can of pop, which was like free. And she just said like right away, oh, I'm so glad we got sat with people that don't drink. And then because she told us all about how long she'd been in AA.
Oh my God.
So then it was like, well, you can't.
He can't drink.
Yeah, you can't go backwards. And Mike doesn't drink now, but during that time he was.
Yeah.
And so he just looked at me and I was like, you can't go.
Oh no.
There was a lot of things that day. It's a good story, though. Okay, so have you ever wished that you had a memory eraser, like from Men in Black? Either for you, somebody else?
Yeah. I think when I was younger, especially, and I was going through like some rough relationship stuff, I think in the few years after that, I wished so hard that I could just wipe it all away. Because not only was I feeling like, all the regular stuff around breakups, but there was some shame involved with various things. And shame is just such a powerful thing that you just wish could be lifted from you. But I think, so at the time, I think I full on wanted Will Smith to come and like erase all this shit, just take it all away. I think only with distance and time and a little bit of age do I realize, like, no, even some of my shitty memories, I want to keep them,
Yeah.
Because in some ways, they've made me who I am. They also made me realize, like, all that shame, that wasn't right. Like, that was me internalizing stuff other people told me or, all that kind of stuff. Now, I wrote my answer to this before hearing your Hawaii story. If I had had a Hawaii story, I would have wanted that shit wiped, just wiped away.
I think Mike would, and I like to keep it because, I always like a good story, And
so, question to you, would you use a memory eraser?
I was thinking the same. It's so funny that you said that because I had the exact same reaction where I was thinking of like all these awkward things I've said or done or mistakes, things like that. And I was thinking, well, I don't really want to take that back because that's something that helped shape me or helped me figure out, better choices in the future. But I think if I could have one that was just like for awkward moments, like I've said something stupid and it's not like a overreaching life decision. It's just I was awkward in the moment. I also have that feeling a lot for other people. Like if you're watching something and they're awkward, it makes me very uncomfortable. And I'm like, just stop, stop.
That's why I can't watch reality TV because there's so much uncomfortableness. I can't handle it.
Yeah. And so I would want a memory eraser for those people. So I could just be like, hey, everyone, look at me. That didn't happen. You're welcome.
Oh, so you're being selfless and you're offering the memory eraser to people who really could use it.
Well, I figure after a certain point, I'm going to use it on myself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, if you use it on yourself, do you forget you have it?
You might. That's a conundrum.
That is a conundrum. Something to think about. I'm going to have to get a hold of Will Smith. Find out the inner workings of this memory eraser. But I agree with you. Same idea. You can't erase some of the stuff because...
Yeah. And especially, I think, only with time did I realize that some of the awkward feelings, the bad feelings, the shame especially, were things that I don't know if I needed to take on, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of relates to our theme again, where, as we said, this is about being convinced maybe that you're crazy. We've talked about gaslighting before. Mm-hmm. And my first pick, my fiction pick, I chose because, let me tell you about the book first. It's called The Revisioners by Margaret Wilkerson Sexton. And this came out last year. And like I said, we've talked about the idea of gaslighting before, where someone who is often an abuser or a manipulator, some kind of authority, is making someone else doubt themselves and make them doubt what may be abuse. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about that in domestic abuse, particularly in gender relationships. But in the last few weeks, thinking about the protests that are happening right now, I've been taken by the idea of racial gaslighting. And I saw this Instagram post from a woman that I will link to in the notes. And the idea is that for so many years, white people have been telling black people, it's not that bad. You're exaggerating. Right. You're too sensitive. It's just a joke. If you just work hard, you just follow the rules, there's no barrier to your success. There's no such thing as systemic racism. You are crazy. This is not happening. Right. And to me, when I saw that, it was like total light bulb, oh my God, yeah, this is what's happening is some, black people are continually being told that they're crazy for seeing the world as it really is.
Right.
So in this book, The Revisioners, we have a few different storylines. In modern times, there's a biracial single mother, Ava, who has just moved into her white grandmother's house with her 12-year-old son. And soon, her grandmother's behavior becomes pretty erratic and even racist. Oh. Then we flash back to 1924 to Josephine, who is Ava's grandmother. And Josephine was a former slave. And at the time, she is now a sharecropper. She owns a little bit of property, and now she has some new white neighbors. And Josephine escaped from slavery as a child, and she and this white lady next door sort of starting to be sort of a cautious friendship until Josephine discovers that she's been taken in by the KKK. So that's major problem. The women's branch of the KKK. And then we're also flashing back to Josephine's childhood in 1855 on the plantation. And there's a community that's planning an escape, and they're called the Revisioners. And they perform these sort of very supernatural, spiritual rituals where they're attempting to get themselves out of slavery. So these three storylines going on all at the same time. And we've got some very real history, some elements of magic. What I love about this is sort of the span across time that, the situation is, of course, changing over time. And by modern times, white readers might be like, look, everything's better now. Racism is done. Right. Yay. But as this book shows, and I think this is a big point of this book, is you're never free of previous generations. We're always a result of what came before us. Yeah. They live in us. And so it could be said that for blacks, it's a legacy of an oppression. And for whites, it's a legacy of being the oppressors, So I think that's really explored in this modern section with Ava, who's she's supposed to acknowledge how good her life is in comparison to Josephine's or to, the ancestors before her. And she's continually, especially by her grandmother, made to doubt herself and her experiences. And I found an interview with the author where she says that one of the main messages I wanted the readers to get from the book was that there is intergenerational trauma. There's also intergenerational strength and wisdom and power that's passed along from our ancestors' struggles. Wow. So really powerful book. Yeah. I think it's really interesting to read right now, thinking about racial gaslighting, some of the things that have been going on. So, yeah.
Wow.
Really enjoyed it.
I like that frame that you put around gaslighting. We don't usually think of it in that way, but that's so accurate. And, when you talk about gaslighting, sometimes you talk about the long-term effects of that on someone. And when you put it in that light and you talk about racial gaslighting, and then, people that can't get there and see why, people would be this upset.
Absolutely. And I think it ties to your pick from last week, white fragility, where we being white people haven't had to challenge ourselves and think about that. So it's just kind of been passed on and on and on. And then we keep doing it. We keep gaslighting people and saying, oh, no, what are you talking about? That's not happening.
Yeah. And I think when that's one thing, too, that I think is a skill that we probably don't spend enough time on teaching people, which is having a difference. Not that it relates to what we were just talking about, but having a difference of opinion. You can do that without gaslighting someone.
Yes.
You can do that without saying, well, you're crazy, that's wrong. And that's a skill, though, that you have to teach, that people tend to get defensive about their own way of thinking.
Very much, yeah.
And if you give people the communication tools, then they can talk about it without making the other person feel like they're dumb or whatever their idea is has to be wrong. And so, but, who learns that skill ever? Unless you teach yourself, Come on.
Again, that's a logical thing that we should be taught and use, but no, that's silly.
No, exactly.
No.
Exactly. Well, the book that I picked for my fiction pick this week is called Long Bright River by Liz Moore.
I just picked this up from the library.
Oh, it's a good one.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay.
It was just published in January 2020. That's funny because mine was a library copy too. So I like that we're both getting the same.
Maybe I got your copy.
Well, I haven't returned mine yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
I just like that we both have the same book.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
So it was published by Riverhead, which is an imprint of Penguin. So in this book, we have two sisters. The slightly older sister is Michaela. They call her Mickey. And then we have Casey. And they've kind of been dealt a tough hand of cards. Their mother ends up being addicted to substances and dies when Casey's a baby, and Mickey's pretty young, has a few memories of her, but is very young. And they end up being raised by their mother's mother. And she is tough, and she's grown up very poor, and the girls now are obviously in this situation. And so she has very little time for empathy, sympathy, even really affection. And she manages to basically push their dad out because she blames him for her daughter getting hooked on the stuff because he was also a drug user. Oof. And so it's a very tough, they grow up kind of really only having each other. And they take kind of the two quintessential paths. Mickey takes this path and becomes a police officer, and Casey takes another path and is addicted and is living on the streets, basically. So the book opens and we're following Mickey on her patrol, and she's realizing her and her sister in the years have come to kind of an agreement. Like, they see each other, but they don't acknowledge each other. They don't really talk or speak. And she realizes in her patrol that she hasn't seen her sister in a while. And at the same time, we find out that there seems to be some sort of serial killer in the area that she patrols that is killing women that work on the streets, sex workers. And so right away, Mickey is very upset about this, and it's really weighing on her. She's starting to feel like, okay, something's going on. I don't know where she is. And everything is getting really twisted. And so I picked it for this because from there are so many twists and turns that, I mean, I can't even tell you anything else because it would ruin it for you, but so great. It's like a mystery wrapped in a story about empathy, which is very interesting. It's like she does such a brilliant job of explaining the faces of addiction and the parts that people like to push away and not recognize or say that's their fault, or, if only they could get sober, or, and really puts a face to it, helps kind of give light to the fact that sometimes these choices are basically made for us. So there's that element, there's the mystery element, there's like multiple mysteries within the mystery, but the main character, Mickey, that you're following, you feel like quite a bit that she's lost. Like, no one around her is giving her a lot of good advice or helping her. They're kind of pushing her into a certain area that they like where she stays. Just be a police officer, mind your business, let the detectives do it. Or just be a police officer, don't worry about it. She made that decision, or, yeah, you saw something maybe that you think is important, but nobody's going to listen to you because you're female on the force and we don't want to hear about it. So there's all these layers of things happening to her, people convincing her that she's the crazy one, and she's basically only has her gut telling her, no, something is off. So really draws you in. The characters draw you in. Kind of the path that the story takes is so interesting. I thought, besides just being a great mystery, I mean, it was brilliant for that. There's such a deeper, important discussion about empathy and how we treat people when we're not happy with the decisions that they make. So it was real good. So if that's ever a quote to put on something, it was real good.
I know I've said something similar in the past, like, real good. It was real good.
That is. Who gave that lady a podcast?
We gave ourselves this podcast, which is why we can say a book is real good.
That's probably why you're never going to see a blurb by me on a book.
Can you imagine, like, you get a copy of a book and
You
start
write
it back.
back.
Real good, Aaron. Should I ask you to blurb my book when it comes back? Just real good.
Real good. Real good. I'm also imagining like getting a advance copy that you have to send the blurb back, to the publisher, and that's what you write. And they're like,
Huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're off the list.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate? Nope. It was real good.
I think you've got a future as a reviewer and a blurber.
I think
for
so.
sure.
I'm going to get in it.
Well, my other genre book is called Heavy by Keith Slayman from 2018. So Keith grows up as a black boy with his mother and grandmother. And this book is written to his mom. She's the you in the book. And the mom is a really complicated figure. I forgot to mention this is a memoir. I think that was evident by what I was just saying, but just to be clear, this is a memoir, yes. And his mom, as I said, very complicated figure. She's an esteemed professor, but she beats him regularly, saying he needs to be perfect in order to be safe. She forces him to write long essays explaining himself. She's constantly berating him for his weight, too. And because as he grows, she's trying to gain this foothold in academia. She's a political scientist. There's never much money and always an empty fridge in a pantry. So maybe because of that food scarcity, maybe because of a number of other reasons, really, Keith has a love and a hate for food. So his weight grows and then it shrinks as he's trying to control it with anorexia, insane exercise. He never feels comfortable in his body. As he grows up, goes to college, he becomes a professor and writer himself. Still, always torn up about how he looks, how he feels. Overall, this is just a beautiful, heartbreaking book. And here's what I particularly liked. I think, as you and I have discussed many times, our culture is weight obsessed. It is constantly scrutinizing our bodies. It is telling us we're not good enough. We're too fat or too thin. We're too round or we're too straight. Women, of course, we get it a lot. But as this book shows, men get it too. And our culture is designed to make us doubt ourselves, to make us crazy, to make us doubt, like we are okay as we are. Just that very basic idea of accepting our body as it is. Our culture says, nope, that's crazy. You can't do that. So you can't think about anything else, really, when you're dedicating all of your mental and physical energy in trying to be smaller to fit this fantasy. So there's that aspect of our culture being weight obsessed. But there's also our culture is deeply rooted in white supremacy, which means that our culture and our laws are saying that black bodies are not as valuable, not as beautiful, and that they could, in fact, get you killed. And that's designed to make you crazy, too. So both of these things are just... they're coming to fruition by making him feel absolutely nuts or trying to convince him that he's in the wrong for just existing the way that he is. So he's trying to live with both of these two crazy-making cultures, and the book is him trying to separate truth from some of those lies. The truth of some of his past, the truth of his mom, the truth of how messy it is to be a human in this world. I love the title here, too, the idea of heavy, because it's really talking about just how heavy it is to live under our culture, especially those two aspects of our culture. A culture that's just constantly gaslighting us, especially gaslighting the most vulnerable, the most oppressed. And I like the idea, too, of how heavy shame can be. And this book, and in many ways, is about shame, of just living in a damn body in this world. So, as I said, very, very affecting, very personal, but yet very, it's one of those books that if you're trying to better educate yourself in this time of protests and understanding systemic racism, this would be a great one. Because like I said, it's individual, it's personal, but it's also contending with this very universal crazy making culture that we have.
Oh, that's been on my list for a long time. I need to get to it.
Yeah, it's really
Sounds
good.
great. Yeah. And perfect. Both your picks are great for right now to, take up and get some further education. Okay, so the pick that nonfiction book I picked, I know that Amy has read this as well, so you can chime in anytime.
Ooh.
Yeah. So the book I picked is Why We Can't Sleep by Ada Calhoun.
I almost picked that for this.
I kind of wondered. I was like, I had the thought that this might be the second time we picked the same book. But it was published in January of 2020 by Grove Press. And the whole basic premise of the book is that the author kind of found herself in this like midlife crisis, like just really unrest, not content, not feeling great. And she couldn't pinpoint why. Like, technically my marriage is fine. My kids are fine. My job is fine. I'm not necessarily like financially strapped. It's just what is wrong? Kind of this malaise almost. And so she started doing research and found that a lot of Gen X women were in the exact same boat as her. They're kind of positioned right between boomers and millennials, and they're just kind of lost, which symbolizes so much of that generation anyway. Because they were the ones that were raised to have it all and to have, instead of being heard and seen, you should just lean in and you've got the world by the tail and this shouldn't be that hard.
It's all on you. You can do it. You can do it. Yep.
Yes, yes. It's all, the whole onus always lands on the person instead of really looking at the whole culture and how it's set up. So I know that you read this book and you had the same reaction to it that I did. I fall where my birthday falls, that some people would consider me a millennial. Some would say Gen X. I would say I identify more with the Gen X.
I would say you do too.
Yeah. I qualify more in that. And this book spoke to me a lot on that level of, we've talked about this. Like when we got out of college, we were like in the middle of a time where jobs were scarce and it was hard. But no one really recognized that. It was always just this, do it. You did it. Like you went to college, you got the degree, make it, do it on your own.
Yep.
And there was never really any recognition of like, oh, this is different than what we had, or this is a different place than we were.
And judgment almost from the previous generation. Well, it wasn't that hard. Why is it so hard for you? That makes no sense. Why are you complaining?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was this idea that if you're not content or happy, it's because you haven't figured out how to be happy. You haven't figured out how to make your life feel like you want it to. Instead of really getting into some of that stuff, it's more, like the lean in philosophy and you're just not looking at it correctly philosophy, instead of like, no, really, what's going on here? And she was finding that the more and more people she talked to, more and more people were having the exact same experience. So there's tons of great anecdotes in there, great stories. I also really like that it offered some solutions or some ideas for moving forward. And I picked it for this because I think that happens not just to Gen Xers. I think it happens to people, and especially females a lot, that we're told that our emotions make us crazy. If you have an emotion or feeling that someone else can't empathize with, well, then it must be you. You must be insane. Because who would feel that way?
Right.
Instead of ever feeling like your feelings are just valid, like you have them and you're allowed to have them, we've always been taught that if they're not right or they don't fit in the right box or the right category at the right time, that there's something wrong with us. So I really thought that this book, it just hit some of that stuff really well. And the title, Why We Can't Sleep. Yeah. Right? Exactly.
I really appreciate it. And I fall at the tail end of Gen X. And I like, first off, that she defined it, because sometimes it's so confusing how people call. And here she defined it as those born between 65 and 80, I think, right? I liked, too, that she very plainly, just through statistics, described the world we were raised in as then the world that we sort of came of age in, and why it's making us crazy.
Yeah.
And that was huge. It was like, yes, those were all my experiences. I thought it was maybe just me, and I just figured I'm feeling weird because it's just me. I didn't think other women were feeling that way. I didn't feel,
Especially
enjoyed
that
a lot.
idea of like having it all. You can have it all. You can have the career you want. You can have the family you want. You can do, and there's never any discussion about the fact that that's impossible.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even a thing.
Yeah. And she went to a lot of effort to say, like, we were born after, you know, the second wave of feminism. And so it was assumed, like, okay, you got all your rights. Now you can, you know, be a mom and you can be at work and, you know, do everything a woman is supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And apparently never sleep.
Yeah. No, and that's why you can't.
That's why you
'cause
can't.
All you keep thinking about is all the stuff. It's like a little gerbil wheel in your head that you can't get off of. So this book will make you feel better about that.
Do you find that gerbil wheel has sped up during the pandemic?
It did, and then I feel like I've effectively found a little wedge to
Ooh,
stop it sometimes.
how?
Just, you know, we've talked about this a little bit, that I just, at a certain point, I was like, this cannot continue. Like, this kind of level of anxiety and need to be productive. And I just decided I'm going to embrace the slow downness that this has brought. I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to make it part of my life.
Yep.
And that's what I'm going to do. And you and I have talked about that in terms of like planners, even like not thinking that we're going to get 55 things done in a day. It's okay.
And then getting pissed at ourselves when we weren't getting it done. Yeah, you're right. It's we're sort of changing our expectations for every day as well as, you know, long term. You've also started running, Erin.
Yeah. Yep, I have.
And as I say it again, I'm just like, wow, Erin's running.
It's not like it's okay. We need to be clear about something.
I want you to talk about it because it's a wonderful, crazy making idea in my head, and I love it.
Well, it all started because I got like this walking pad thing that's not like a full treadmill. It doesn't take up as much room, and I've been walking. And we talked about the book Burnout.
Yes.
And a big part of the book Burnout has to do with completing the stress cycle.
Yes.
That if you don't ever give yourself the physical outlet, which previously I was probably completing it sometimes by crying in the shower.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe there's more productive ways, more effective ways.
Less emotionally draining ways?
Yeah. And so I started, and it's not, to be clear, there's no thought process about weight in this.
Oh,
There's no
no.
thought process
And I didn't mean it that
no,
way.
I know
Yeah,
you didn't. But I think that's important because I think that's helpful for people to understand why it's a stress reliever. Because it's not like another thing I'm adding where I'm like, oh my God, if I don't do this, I'm going to gain 10 pounds.
Yes.
Like, I couldn't care less.
Nope.
So it's not about that. It's not really like a health issue. Like, oh, you need to walk so much to keep your heart healthy. None of that. It's really just the act of doing something physical and honestly, just a little piece of time to myself. And so I've been walking quite a bit for the last month and a half, and then it just sort of evolved into like, I think I need something a little faster to help kind of complete the cycle. And you know, I've been doing it and it's enjoyable, and so that's what it is.
It's fantastic. I love it.
So, that's kind of a good example. Like, I've just been
Absolutely.
trying to, because I think another thing that this book that I really related to was, you never feel like the thing you're doing at that moment is right. Like, if you're putting time into work, then, oh my God, my kids need me, and I'm ignoring them, and I'm not helping them, and I'm not playing with them, and I'm not raising them correctly. But then if you're spending the time with your kids, you're like, I'm ignoring my career, and it's all going to come crashing down, and I'm not working hard enough, and I can't get there. So, and if you're taking time for yourself, then what are you doing? You can't be doing that.
Exactly.
Even though that's what we're told. Take some me time. Do some self-care.
All of these messages are contradicting each other at the same time. Yeah.
And even the expectation that comes along with that. You know, self-care is, get a massage. Well, that's not financially possible for everyone. Take a bubble bath with this crazy tray with wine and bath bombs.
Forgetting the fact that your son likes to follow you into every room.
There's no like real world example of self-care being like, sit in the shower and cry because that's the only place someone isn't going to find you. I mean, we've been talking about that a lot. I need to probably back off. People are going to think I have a problem.
Well, I mean, in reality, you've been in quarantine for a long time. And I mean, you kind of wanted a little space and time for yourself. And I'm sure that this is helping in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this book will help, I think, if you're feeling that even now in quarantine about.
Yeah. In fact, I think it was a good read during quarantine to help sort of reinforce what we were talking about, where we were realizing like, wait, maybe we were burning ourselves out, you know, before this. And that really, by showing like all of these contradictory messages and expectations that we're getting that are impossible, it kind of helped us along that route, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. So
why we can't sleep.
Why you can't sleep? She nailed it down for you.
Whereas I, since quarantine, have been sleeping much more. My daily need has gone up to like 9 or 10 hours a night.
See, but I would say that's because you put some of this stuff to bed. You said,
that's true.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
Guess what I'm going to do? Sleep. Mm-hmm. That's a normal human thing to do. Sleep.
Sure is. Well, pop culture wise.
Yes.
I chose a limited series from Netflix from last year. There's 4 episodes, each about an hour long. It was directed by Ava DuVernay. It's called When They See Us. And I just watched this like a week or 2 ago. And yeah, I think when this had originally come out, I knew it was going to be tough watching. And so I pushed it off. Because I was like, I'm just not in the mood for that. But increasingly, I saw this as one of those that's being encouraged, white people to watch particularly to make us a little bit more aware of certain history and things like that. So I finally did. So the show is this. In April 1989, 5 teenage boys from Harlem are picked up by police the night a white woman jogging in Central Park is brutally raped and beaten. I think a lot of us may know this case, the Central Park jogger case. Yep. It became extremely high profile. Because it was high profile from the start, the lead investigator very quickly decides how this case went down, that these boys ganged up on this woman, despite the fact that there's no evidence linking the boys to this case, and that most of the boys don't even know each other. Like, they're mentioning names and they have no idea. So the police begin a process of pushing these kids to confess. Most of the kids are 14 and 15. And they are kept alone in police custody for hours and hours without their parents, without any food, without any breaks. I mean, it's almost like torture scenario when you think about it. They are scared. They're confused. They are repeatedly told they can go home if they just admit to what the cops already know. And so the cops are piecing together this confession from all of these kids. So it's the start of this absolute nightmare, because then these confessions that they're forcing the kids to give are used to send the kids to jail, despite no other evidence, despite the fact that in their trials, the kids are like, I didn't admit, or I admitted to this under these pretenses or under this context. They are splashed all over the media as the killers. And so the younger kids, the 14 and 15-year-olds, they go to juvenile detention. But one kid who's 16 is sent straight to Rikers Island as a teenager. And all of them, in all, they serve between like 5 to 14 years each. And this all, their prison sentences are done. Most of them are out in the world. And then someone else finally admits to the crime in like 2002. Only then are these 5 people exonerated. So, like I said, this is tough stuff. And when it came out last year, I knew it would be, so I kind of avoided it. But in the last few weeks, I was seeing this recommended. I realized, like, that's kind of a privilege that I can avoid that. That's kind of like, it's kind of like, I really should know about this. So I watched it, and the show is... like, I shouldn't have avoided it because it's tough, but it's extremely touching. It is very... it's heartbreaking in a lot of ways, but it's really kind of encouraging in some ways too, if that makes sense. That first episode where they're pressuring these boys, I just thought about, like, what if I was their parent and my kids were being subjected to this, and I maybe, because of my socioeconomic status, because, I'm Black or I'm Latino, I'm somehow tricked out of the room, or I'm encouraged to tell my kids to confess to get them to come home. And that was a horrifying, horrifying thought. And I picked it because it's crazy making in a way. These boys are told again and again by cops, by the judge, by the jury, by society, that they are guilty, that they are animals. And for them, like, because they're so young, because everyone is telling them that, this is the case, holding on to that idea that they're not crazy, that they actually didn't do it is really hard.
Yeah.
And in that mind, it was sort of the ultimate gaslighting in a way,
Right.
So I watched this, and then let me also recommend, there's a special that goes with this where Oprah Winfrey brings, because she's one of the producers, she brings together Ava DuVernay, some of the cast and crew of the show, and then the actual exonerated 5, and brings them all together in this extra hour special. And that it's really cool to watch it after the show's done, because they talk about somehow like how the show was created, but also then they talk to the actual men. So together it's like 5 hours of TV. It's going to stay with you for a long time, because I think this will stay with me for a long time too. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's a good pick, though.
Whew, yeah.
It's a good way to say it, too, that, you know, our privilege allows us to act like we don't need to see it or face something tough.
Yeah.
Well, the pick that I picked for pop culture this week is a movie. It's came out in 2015. It has Bradley Cooper, Sienna Miller. It's called Burnt.
Ooh.
And it is Bradley Cooper plays Chef Adam Jones, who basically had everything and then lost it. Like, he was this incredible award-winning chef. He was a 2-star Michelin chef. He just had some bad habits, some addictions, some things that took him down. And so he's had to basically work his way back up. And so he kind of had to humble himself, take him to the basics again. Like, he kind of puts himself through the basics of cooking again until he feels ready. But he has to find a restaurant that is going to allow him to come back, because his reputation was so ruined. He is also going to need people, you know, in the restaurant to support him in the kitchen, because he wants to go for his 3rd Michelin star. So it's the story of him coming back and trying to take what he learned and putting that in action, and then also seeing the after effects of things that people do, that, you know, how other people hold on to that, how he mistreated people and then they held on to that because, you know, he made them feel crazy. He made them feel like it was their fault, and how that affected them and their careers. I also picked it because it's very raw. It's very emotional as a movie. But it also, I liked it in this setting, because you're kind of taking a really difficult topic and putting it in maybe a little bit safer setting. You know, we're in a kitchen, we're getting a 3rd Michelin star, but it also had a lot to do with the addiction and the idea that when we think that we can get out of something, we'll throw anything at the wall, you know, and that's what he did. And that's the habit that he's trying to break, is sitting with the fact that, no, it's me. It's not everybody else, you know. And I liked that viewpoint. I like looking at kind of the gaslighting idea from that
the
viewpoint.
idea of the person that's maybe doing it.
Seeing that, where that comes from. Sometimes it's very hard to have empathy for someone like that a lot. But if you could take a step back and look at it, you know, that's something that is really interesting, important, and I think it helps you kind of figure out where someone's coming from. So I really enjoyed the movie. I remember I saw it in the theater. Remember the theater?
What?
I know.
Oh, I remember going to theaters. Oh, remember when we would go to theaters together?
We would.
Oh, that was fun.
And I would stare at you.
Yeah.
To see how you were acting.
And we'd sit very close.
Very close.
Like really
Very
oddly close.
Oddly close.
And close to strangers.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Now I don't want your COVID body anywhere near me. Not you specifically, the other people.
It's fine. I mean, if I have COVID, you don't want to sit next to me.
But I'll take your COVID. I just won't take anybody else's.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
My COVID's the good COVID.
Yeah, yours is the good kind.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's great. And it's very entertaining. And I really enjoyed it. But I also think it's just a good movie. So even if you're just kind of looking for something good to watch.
I like that idea of like seeing it from the other perspective. Someone has to contend with what they've done or how they've made other people feel crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
there's
a couple
hope.
of gut punches in there, let me tell you.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right. I like it.
All right. Yeah.
Well, we talked about some tough stuff.
We did.
But some good picks.
Yeah.
A lot of good picks.
A lot of good picks.
You know what I discovered this week, Erin? We got a new review. Someone likes what we're doing. They like the fact that we pick tough picks.
They do.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
They like the fact that we used to sit together next to each other in movies. They like the fact that I want to rub my COVID fingers all over your eyeballs.
I think they like the
cut they don't say
jibs.
They didn't say any of that in particular, but that's what I'm taking from it. Yes. So I'm going to read this review.
Okay, you do
Maybe
that.
give you listeners an idea of how to leave a review.
Yes.
This one comes from Iowa Book Lover, so you know this person's going to be
Already
great.
the best.
Yeah. This person says, the broads have great chemistry.
No
It's
lie.
true.
That's true.
And are both so quick-witted. I mean...
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
I like that.
I love the book choices and their banter. Amy's laughter is contagious.
Oh, it is.
I swear that's not why I chose to read this out loud, but I mean, I feel
that's
pretty
the
good
bonus,
about
though.
that.
Yeah.
This person says, I'm in 2 book clubs and I'm recommending their recommendations. Also, 2 book clubs.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Overachiever.
Whew.
Good on you.
Yeah, I'm
but
impressed.
also, thanks for taking us to your book clubs.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Spreading the word.
Yeah.
Oh,
So great.
thank you, Iowa Book Lover.
Yes. Honestly, thank you. And for everyone else, maybe put those COVID fingers to good use and type up a review.
We're not assuming that all our listeners have COVID,
No.
but if you do, we
Statistically,
still love
though.
you. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Are we? I don't know. I mean, we love you still if you have filthy, filthy COVID fingers.
Filthy.
Filthy.
But use them to type. Leave us a review and we'll read it.
Yes, we will. In the meantime, happy reading.
I'm up again. Same night, another dream. Before trying this recording thing, I didn't remember much of anything of these dreams. I didn't remember much from any of the women. And one night of doing this, and it's broken things open. The dreams they're in me, and they're coming out of me, and
Talk to me. I am not broken. I am the most whole, most real.
cause their despair. I wait for the word. Witch.
Look at the mad woman in her cage. She was a woman with holes inside her. That was the heaviest factor, the final evidence, the heart of the issue.
Somehow, you understand this. You hear me. Wherever you are, whatever this is, This isn't a dream journal anymore. It's not. It's just fact. Because now this is some sort of record. What are these dreams? Maybe there's a better question. Who are these women? Weird Woman is a Broads and Books production. All 9 episodes are available January 10th. Listen and subscribe to Weird Woman on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your favorite podcast platform. That's WYRD Woman, wherever you listen to podcasts.